Welcome to the Mets pod. On today's show, Keith Hernandez joins us. What more needs to be said right there to talk about the surging Mets right now as they've won 4 games in a row. Their first place lead continues to climb. So reminder, subscribe to the Mets pod at Apple Podcast, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Mets Pod. I'm your host, Connor Rogers, joined as always by my co-host, Joe DeMayo. And the Mets right now have won 4 games in a row, 4 division games in a row. They have bounced back quite nicely after, losing back-to-back games. So this Mets team, despite some adversity with the injury list right now, they continue to get it done. Notably, the offense right now. We are excited to talk about that in just a few moments with Keith Hernandez. But got to kick things off by bringing Joe in here. Joe, this team just finds a way to get it done. Some unlikely heroes, I would politely say. What have you thought of these last couple games here for the Mets?
It's crazy that the Mets are playing so well this year, and the first time they swept the series was Philly this past weekend. It feels like there's no way that's possible, but like you said, they've won 4 in a row, and you're getting contributions from the likes of Nick Plummer, who replaced Travis Jankowski after he went on the IL when he broke his finger or hand, whatever. And so he's going to be out a while. So Plummer has the opportunity to kind of take over that 4th outfielder role here. The Mets signed him this past offseason. He was actually the first signing of the Billy Epler era. They signed him to a big league deal. He was a minor league free agent, former first-round pick of the Cardinals that just didn't seem to put it together in St. Louis until this past season. And now you've seen him take another level. And when you watched him hit that home run on Monday night out to left field, tell me that swing did not remind you of Michael Conforto. Like, he had to kind of short follow through and just take it the other way. So, I mean, very impressed with Nick Plummer. And then Luis Guillorme is a guy that we have to talk about. I mean, MLB The Show has to give him like 99 reaction and 99 fielding ability. It looks like Ray Ordonez out there. Like, he's an absolute wizard. He plays balls on short hops. He makes throws from unconventional angles, bare hands. It's beyond impressive what Guillorme has done on the defensive side of the ball. And then just overall, we talked about this last week, the offense needs to score during this stretch. They're without DeGrom still. Scherzer out a while. Still waiting on Tyler McGill. The offense is what's going to have to keep this team afloat. The pitching, is going to be what it is. But if you could average 5-6 runs a game like they have been doing, you're going to win most games almost regardless of who's starting.
Yeah, I think you're right, Joe. When you texted me the Ray Ordonez defensive comp for Guillorme, that just went off in my head like a green light. I'm like, absolutely. It's the quick, natural hands where his delivery of the ball, his ability to release the ball is the difference on those challenge replays we see very often of getting the guy out or turning to. There's a chemistry with whoever he plays with, which always impresses me with Guillorme. Obviously, Lindor, it's easy to have chemistry with somebody as talented as him, but Guillorme never looks out of place, whether he's playing third, whether he's playing second, and it shows that he can fill in a pinch at shortstop, too, in the rare cases that he needs to do that. And, you brought up Plummer, who has brought some significant excitement to this Mets team that has, I think, what is the most underrated or most important quality in any good team in any sport, and that is they are never dead. The 3-run homer by Castellanos that Ottavino gave up on the fastball on a 0-2 count for the Phillies to take the lead the other day, it felt like a bit of a gut punch, and in other years it would have felt like a total knockout blow. But this year it felt like they got 2 more cracks, and let's see what they can do. And sure enough, not only do they tie the game, but in extra innings, Diaz doesn't allow a run because that's what he's pretty much done the entire year. And the fact that a guy always gets it done, right? Lindor, for the first time in what felt like days, couldn't get it done. They walk Pete because everybody's walking Pete right now. Pete said it on the mic'd up broadcast. Pete said, people are avoiding me like the plague. I believe he said that to Rhys Hoskins. And Escobar, who has had a miserable start to the year, finds a way to get it done. You can kind of... Joe, I want to know your thoughts to this. I thought you can see in that short clip how much this team, or what they think of Escobar, the way they came out. And I know they celebrate around anybody that has a walk-off, but Escobar slams the helmet and Lindor puts him in a bear hug. the level of excitement, you can tell that team knew that one of their biggest leaders, Escobar, really needed that weight off his shoulder, and he got it in that moment.
Yeah, Escobar's quickly become a leader on this team. Even going back to spring training, he took it upon himself to go talk to the entire minor league clubhouse and just, give them some advice. It's not something he had to do. And when the Travis Jankowski thing where he said, no one's going to get my jersey, Eduardo Escobar went and bought or provided a bunch of Travis Jankowski like jersey things for the whole team to wear to, boost the spirits for Travis. It's just a natural born leader that, like you said, has really struggled at the plate. But all you have to do is just look at his career. It feels like as we get warmer here into the summer months and you're seeing the baseball jump a little bit more, something tells me that he may not be quite there yet, but I feel like we're getting closer and closer to that Eduardo Escobar breakout. I mean, you don't hit 28 and 30 home runs in back-to-back full seasons by accident. So there's more in the bat than what there's been, but his leadership, and it shows how excited they were for him that, he really needed to get that off of his back.
Yeah, so they continue to find a way to get it done, and I think the last talking point I wanted to throw your way is it's fun to talk about the Nick Plumbers and the Guillorme breakout year and those kinds of storylines, but the reality of this team right now is that when big names have gone down, notably in the pitching staff, the big names in the lineup have gotten it done and beyond that. And that is Pete Alonso and Francisco Lindor. There's just no way around it. Jeff McNeil's been great. Mark Canha quietly has been really, really good. It's funny how little we talk about him, but he's another guy that finds a way to constantly get on base. Nimmo's been banged up, but we know what he means to this team. But the guys batting third and fourth almost every single night in Lindor and Alonso, it's unbelievable at this point. And it's great for Lindor because we talked about this last week. It's the narratives around him were getting totally ridiculous at that point. But now he's taking things to another level where he could be in line for a career year, Francisco Lindor right now. He looks comfortable. And Pete is just on another dimension right now where it's very, very obvious pitchers want nothing to do with him. The problem is, yes, you can pitch around him to get to a struggling Escobar for as long as Escobar struggles, which we do not think is going to be a full season issue. And there are a lot of bats in this lineup right now that are wreaking havoc, quite frankly.
And when Jeff McNeil is, fully back in the lab like he was last night, he's behind Pete. So you don't even have the opportunity to walk him to, you want to walk him to get, it's the Mets' best pure hitter. So I think what's really impressive with Francisco Lindor is you just see how much in the zone he is. He's been not chasing that breaking ball down and in. Like for the last year plus, it felt like that's the pitch that Francisco Lindor went for every time was the breaking ball down and in. He's been laying off it, finding his pitch. And I saw last night, so Lindor has 40 RBIs as of this recording. He didn't get to there until September of last year. And we're, just past Memorial Day. So, like you said, I think Francisco Lindor is primed for maybe a career year, maybe not, but it's going to be right up against that 2018 season where Lindor hit 38 home runs. He might not hit 38 home runs, but the overall value of him will be just as valuable as I think that season. And, of course, Pete Alonso, MVP type of season, hitting for an average that we've never seen from him before through early going, taking the ball, to right field, to left field, straight to center. He's really become much more of a complete hitter than he kind of ever was before.
He really has. One of the most feared bats in the National League right now is Pete Alonso, and it is showing up by the way teams are treating him and the damage he is doing to the ball right now. All right, time to bring in our guest that needs no introduction, Keith Hernandez. Keith, we've heard some rumors that you've been banging down the door to come on the show, so we're really happy to have you on today.
Oh, I've been just itching to get on your show. I'm home right now. I'm going to overnight in the city with the day game tomorrow. We are, it's Tuesday, and we're going to go on that long West Coast trip. So I'm all packed and ready to go.
So, Keith, something that I look forward to every year, and I think a lot of Mets fans do, is when spring training comes on and you guys do your first broadcast, it's the first time we hear all of your reactions from months of moves, not a day of a game or anything like that. It's months of moves, and after this winter, it was insane. And the thing that jumped out to me was just your overwhelming excitement and honesty around Buck Showalter and the feeling around the camp and how it was a professional camp and how something felt different. And I know you're not a guy to just say that. It has to actually be happening for it to mean something. So what changes have you noticed under Buck in this short time?
Well, I think they're pretty apparent on the field.
Yeah.
But it was, he just took, he's an experienced manager. He's won 3 manager of the years. He's managed in New York. He's managed in postseason. He's got a little bit, I think, more of the old school in him. And I do think that players need to be led. And it was too much experimentation with our managerial choices the last 2 managers, and not to put them down. I think they were in a bad position where Buck came in, and he's a guy that's going to take charge. And he got the attention of the players. It was quite apparent in spring training. And he is a real stickler on teaching as you go along too, as well as managing. I know that he has meetings, group meetings that are very short. He just is short and makes his points. If someone makes a mistake, doesn't back up, he points that out. Or it's also not negative. It's also positive that if someone does something properly, fundamentally, it's brought up. And then there are things that are situations that are brought up in the meetings that could happen. So they're just keeping the players alert and aware, and you can just see it on the field. Now, everything's going right for them right now. I mean, they're a good team. They're a very good team. And, Gary said last night that the oldest team in the league. I did not know that. They're built to win. And the 4 veterans they brought here in the offseason have really set an example to our returning players. And I think it's had a very positive effect on McNeil, Guillorme, Pete, and how to conduct themselves on the field and professionally. And it's just a treat to go to the ball game and cover this team. And I know that they'll probably hit a streak where they'll hit a little speed bump, maybe not. But they hustle, and it's just I just got to feel. I mean, I was just praying that they'd hire Showalter in the offseason and not the other guys, and it was a wise choice.
Let's bring this to you really quick. So, congratulations on getting your jersey number retired. That's obviously an incredible honor. Tell us about the conversation when you found out that it was going to happen, and what was your initial emotion when you hung up the phone?
Well, Steve Cohen called me, and it was around, I believe, late December or early January, and I think it was early January, and I thought he wanted to talk about the moves they'd made, because they made all those, and they spent $200 million on 4 players. And I started talking about the team, and then he kind of interrupted me and said, well, it's not the reason why I'm calling. I'm calling because we have decided we were going to retire your number. So that caught me completely off guard. And I was stunned. And when I hung up the phone after the conversation, I immediately called my brother. And, it just kind of soaked in. It took a while to soak in. I mean, it's just really, the Mets are 60 years old. It's their 61st season. I'll be the 6th player up there. So it's like one every decade. And there's only 4 players now once I'm up there, and 2 managers. It's a great honor. It's the greatest honor that anybody, that organization can bestow on a player. And I'm just still overwhelmed.
Do you have your speech ready?
No, I don't. I'm a great procrastinator. I have 5 minutes, so I've got to get it done. My family's coming in. I've got a few people to recognize. I wish I could have more time to do more, but they got to play a ball game. I'll get it done in 5 minutes.
All right, so I wanted to take it back to when you mentioned the veteran players on this team. Obviously, they did sign a lot of older players, but star players. When you look at, obviously, Scherzer and Marte are household names, but even Escobar and Canna, that not a lot of Mets fans got to watch the A's last year, and they also traded for Bassett as well. So I mean, Keith, you've been the young guy on really, really good teams. You've been the veteran player on really, really good teams. What kind of dimension does adding that many veteran players that have won a lot and succeeded for a really long time bring to a team like the Mets?
Well, it depends on their attitude. A lot of times you can get a disgruntled veteran, and that could be a problem because he's someone that your younger players look up to. But this whole group, and actually there's 5 players they brought. We're forgetting Marte, who I mean, everybody. I said it last night on the air. Even in my playing day, I have never seen a team collectively run the ball hard to first base like this team. And we lead the league in major leagues in infield hits. And Buck said we run hard to first base. I don't know how it happened. Was it Buck? I have no idea. Or was it just in the DNA of these players? It is refreshing, and it has started many rallies, and just goes to show you. I mean, Marte didn't hit for a while, for around a month and a half, 2 months. We're almost 2 months now, 50 games in. So Marte was just kind of chugging along, struggling a little. Not really. I just was waiting for him to get hot. But the whole time that he didn't have it together offensively, it never affected his defense, and he ran hard all the time. Guillorme, same thing when he was 0 for 14 in the beginning, when he wasn't getting the spot playing. Lindor runs hard. McNeil is behaving much better when he has an 0 for 4. That's a big change. And that's a positive for Jeff. And he runs hard to first base. Escobar is another prime example. I mean, he has not hit. He has struggled. It's another guy I'm waiting to get hot. He runs hard to first base, and he plays a hell of a third base. So you got guys that can separate their offense from the defense, and they hustle and don't think the other players don't see that. That's huge, and I think it's a big part of the success of this team.
Staying on the topic of the new players, I have a theory that I want to run by you, that the Mets are zigging while the rest of the league is zagging. The league is obviously trending towards the 3 true outcomes: home run, walk, strikeout. Mets, much more of a contact-based roster. Do you think that's the case, number one? And number two, do you think this style of roster is something that can be a little more consistent throughout a full season?
Well, I think that you have to mold your team, your style of play with the personnel that you have. The Mets have a lot of speed, and that's unusual today. And you're right, the game has trended towards home runs, strikeouts, walks, boring. And
Yeah.
This team is really, I think, the most exciting team in the league. I mean, I haven't seen everybody yet, but offensively, they're so dynamic. They can beat you first to third. They can steal the base. They bunch their hits. What they have? So they had how many hits last night? And they only had like 4 or 5 extra base hits. There were a lot of singles, like double-digit singles. And it's more fun. They're putting the ball in play. They don't strike out, and it's action. And I just think it's old-fashioned baseball, and it's winning. And maybe this will be the team that will get other general managers to start thinking along the same lines, because the Mets just keep running circles around the opponents. And you're right about our division. No one's over 500. And to me, the Braves wound up losing last night. They're 9.5. You push Philly back 11.5. The Marlins are 14.5. You start putting that kind of distance. I know it's a long season, but that's tough to come back from. The next big leap for the Mets now, they are 16 over 500, get to 20 over 500. That's their next step. But you don't ever want to look 4 games ahead. But you got the Nationals here, 2 more, then you got a big road trip coming up. And I think if they can go to the West Coast and play 500, which I think they can, they might come back winning. But it'll be it should catapult them, because everybody else is just, I mean, the Phillies, you saw what the Phillies are all about. They stink.
No, dude, they cannot play the field.
Oh my gosh. Well, they never have.
No, but this
They
is
never have.
the new low, Keith. It feels
yeah,
like.
yeah. They signed 2 DHs and threw them in the outfield.
Well, it's unfortunate that Harper's hurt because either Schwarber or Castellanos would be their DH.
Right.
But with Harper not able to throw, they got to throw them both. Their corner outfielders out there. That's shaky, very shaky.
Something that Joe and I talk about on the show a lot, Keith, is how the Mets, their lineup works starting pitchers. Even when they don't get to a guy, if a guy holds them to a run, or they do a really good job working counts and keeping starters in the game in this pitch count era of 5 innings, maybe 6 maximum. They get to bullpens early, it feels like, and I think the poster boy, the catalyst of that is Brandon Nimmo. Now, you've seen Nimmo his entire career, one of the craziest, player developments that the Mets have had in the last decade. How much better he's gotten. He's the catalyst of this lineup. As he approaches free agency after this year, are we officially at the point where he's a guy they just can't let out the door at this point?
Well, I think his value goes beyond his performance on the field. He's got a terrific attitude. He hustles. He sets the tone for that team in the leadoff spot. And the only thing I can say that the negative about Brandon is he doesn't steal a base. Doesn't even try to steal the base. So he's a leadoff hitter. He can run. There's no reason why he can't steal bases. And that, as the opponent, the pitcher doesn't have to worry about him. He's not going to steal. He doesn't steal, which is just surprising that the Mets haven't maybe got a Ricky Henderson to come in and maybe next offseason and get him and teach him how to steal bases, because I think he's fast. I think he can steal 25 bases a year easily, and that would. But anyway, his progression has been great. I think I talked with, and I know I'm long-winded here. I think Eric Chavez, being the hitting coach, has changed a lot of things. Where the team now, everything's based. And you got agents telling their players, salary, you might negotiate on your OPS, and that's your power numbers. McNeil's a doubles hitter. Darno was a doubles hitter. Darno came up to me the first series with Atlanta, and during BP, and he said, I should have listened to you back then. I said, what do you mean? He goes, I'm not trying to hit home runs anymore. They were telling me to hit home runs, and even with 2 strikes, he goes, now I'm just hitting the ball in the gaps, and look what's happened. His career's taken off. McNeil's the same way, although when he hits a home run, he likes to hit home runs. He gets a little bit of an uppercut, but everybody I think now is not trying to hit home runs, and they're finding out that when you have rallies like the Mets have had, it's infectious. It's infectious in the audience. The people and the fans love it. It's exciting. It's for us, but it's just as exciting for the players in that dugout. And I think they're discovering a new way to play the game and how to win, and they're having fun.
So you've talked about McNeil a couple times in the last minute. What are you seeing from Jeff this year, compared to last year? And do you believe that the Jeff McNeil, who hit over 300 for the first 2.5 years of his career, if we just call the COVID season a half a year, do you think he's just back to what he's been?
Well, it remains to be seen. He's got to put more years together. He's stopped the big uppercut when he hit the 17 home runs second half. But it was I forget what year that was. We were on the roads. That had to be 19, I think. I'm not sure. The year before COVID. And he regressed because of the uppercut. And last year was not a good year for him. And now he's gotten back to what he is. And he's, I think, our best clutch hitter. He's the guy I want up with the game on the line, even against a left-hander. And that's because he's not trying to hit home runs. But he's still the same aggressive player at the plate. He's just not trying to pull and lift. Buck has been tinkering with the lineup. And he told us earlier, because Nito, the 9-hole with Mazika and Nito, he was hitting McNeil 8th. And he said, I just wanted McNeil, because he's such a good, tough out, that we get Nito up and get the lineup reverse over. Even if Nito makes the 3rd out, then we got top of the order. I wanted to get through the lineup. Well, now he's moved him to the 5-hole, and he's a left-hand hitter. And if I'm a pitcher and I got Pete hitting cleanup, And not a home run is needed. Not if Pete comes up and it's you need a 3-run home run. But if you are at a tie ball game, 1-run ball game, I'd rather face Pete, and this is no criticism, than where a single's needed. I'd rather face. They're both tough. Pick your poison. But McNeil, particularly if it's a right-hand pitcher, that I love him hitting behind Pete, and I think he protects Pete, and he's just been so incredibly clutch, and I think he's going to stay in that 5-hole for a while.
Keith, I said if I had only one All-Star vote to send a Met, I would vote for McNeil when you factor in the defense, when you factor in his approach and everything. Who would you say on this Mets team right now has to be at the All-Star game?
I don't have to pick just one.
You do. Yeah, just one.
Bam Bam. Bam Bam. He's leading the league in RBIs, leading the world in RBIs. He got 13 home runs. He's hitting 280, almost 290.
Sneaky.
I mean, he's come a long way, and he's so disciplined. Guillorme is finally getting it. This is all Buck. I've never seen a manager filter in players like he does. Now, you've got to have the personnel to do it. We have a very, very good bench. I shouldn't say we, the Mets. The Mets have a very, very good bench, so he can sprinkle in. In '86, we had Howard Johnson on the bench, Kevin Mitchell, Danny Heap. We had a terrific bench, so you can rest your players. And I've never seen a manager play as in personnel like he does and makes them feel like they're part of the team. And now with the injuries to Nimmo, who's been out, and McNeil, Guillorme was able to come in and play. And the DH has helped as well. But Guillorme, he made 3 outstanding plays at second base last night that I haven't seen in a long time. I mean, he is an incredible fielder. And that adds to our defense. Our defense is so much stronger. We're turning double plays. Remember how hard it was for the Mets to turn 2? Going back like 3, 4, 5 years?
Yeah, it was bad.
Couldn't turn a pair if it meant their life. They turn 2 now.
So you can say we. You're getting your number retired. I think you're permitted to say we when talking about the Mets. But last one for you, Keith. Old Timers Day is obviously coming up this summer, which is really exciting. Mm-hmm. Are you lacing them up? And what should fans be excited about for that day?
I will put the uniform on. I've had hip surgery, so I'm a little bit leery about swinging the bat. I had replacement, and and I'm just not moving well right now. I'm fine, but I'm a little bit leery to get out there and run around and move around. I'm not nimble like I used to be. Far from it. I'm embarrassingly awkward now. I'm like a big old dump truck.
Well, Ronnie is lucky that if you guys laced him up, you'd take him deep, I think.
I'll be out there in uniform for sure.
Amazing, awesome. Amazing. Keith, it's been incredible catching up with you about this surging Mets. It really has. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I just think that this is a lot like 1984, which took the Met fans. They've been so heartbroken over the years. In '84, they didn't come out the first half of the season for us. And then they started realizing that we were a pretty doggone good team, and the attendance came in the second half. This is a team worth putting this is a team fun to watch. They're good. They're a very good team, and they're fun to play a great brand of baseball, and they hustle. I think it's a team that the fans can get behind and be proud of. I really feel that way.
Well, Keith, thanks so much. We're looking forward to having you back on again at some point this season.
I'll be anytime you want.
All right, great having Keith on the show. And a reminder, you're listening to the Mets Pod. Subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Joe, before we get to the mailbag, I do want to throw something quick at you. We heard from Keith talk about, obviously the honor of getting his number retired and Old Timers Day and a lot of fun stuff. But about specifically this Mets team, what stood out to you the most? Obviously, Keith, we hear him on the broadcast every single night, but I still think we got some different, more expanded answers on today's show from him that make you excited about this team right now. There's no way around it.
To me, what really stood out is how much he praised Buck Showalter and and everything that Buck brings to the table, and how even in the winter he was hoping that the Mets would hire Buck Showalter. And obviously he mentioned that when you're talking about Luis Guillorme and you're talking about the Nick Plumbers and the other bench guys on this roster, that Buck Showalter is getting these guys opportunities and they're coming through. So between obviously wanting him hired and the teaching too, which is something that often we think of managers as they fill out a lineup card and they decide who to bring in from the bullpen and when to pull a starter, and the teaching is for the hitting coaches and the pitching coaches. But Buck is a true teacher, and I think it's really interesting how Keith wanted to make that a very important point for this Mets team.
Yeah, I'm with you, Joe. Obviously, a ton of praise for this Mets staff from Keith. And one thing that really stood out to me was how he pointed out for how great of a player Nimmo is and has become. Imagine the extra dimension added if he's any kind of threat stealing the bases. And Keith said it. He has the speed. He has the athleticism to do it. It's just something that maybe could be expanded in his game, probably more in an offseason. It would take a little work, but with how talented of a leadoff guy, a catalyst guy Nimmo is, if he starts to swipe bags or pose any kind of threat of that, he's going to be an even better player somehow. So, all right, time to get into today's mailbag, a staple of the Mets pod, and this one is from a very loyal listener that always shows up in the mailbag responses. Mets fan 04 asks, what is Luis Guillorme's future with the Mets? Can you see him becoming a starter, or do you think he stays in that super utility role moving forward? We know he's probably the best defensive player on the team, but he's showing he can hit as well. Joe, you and I touched on Guillorme a little bit in our Unsung Heroes section earlier in the show today. We heard Keith talk about Guillorme right now. This is a player you and I text about at times because I'm like, Joe, what is the ceiling with this guy? Because right now he looks like a totally different player offensively. We know the kind of glove he has, especially at second base. But what do you think? Guillorme is under team control for a very long time. You don't even have to look that up. I think it's almost the next half decade. What do you think Guillorme's long-term role is here in New York?
I don't want to burst any bubbles here, but I still feel like he's more of that super utility infielder than an everyday player. Obviously, the way he's hitting has been fantastic, but we've seen this before in the past with Guillorme, where he would go through a stretch where he had to play for a bit, and he would hit, and he would hit, and then it would kind of catch up to him a little bit. I think he's a guy that at times gets maybe a little overexposed if he plays too much, and the league will catches up to him. But his patience at the plate has been impressive to me. His ability to pull the ball has actually been very impressive because historically Guillorme's been just a slap the other way kind of hitter. Now he's actually able to pull the ball a little bit, and he's not hitting home runs, but he's hitting the ball with some level of authority. So I would say his offense has stepped up this year, but I still think ultimately, if he plays for an extended period of time, you'll see kind of the offense fall back a little bit. And that glove is just so special. You're going to find a way to get him in the lineup here and there. And obviously defensively, he could be a replacement for late game if you need to pull somebody out. But it's just so fun to watch him play. And Keith mentioned in the interview about how fun this team is to watch. And Luis Guillorme, I think, is kind of a prime example of the fun that it is watching the New York Mets right now.
One of my takeaways from this question is, Joe, in our conversations about Guillorme is, we, in a sense, aren't used to the Mets being this good of a team, right? They are a really, really good team. The best teams in baseball, look at the Dodgers, have guys like this on the bench. There's a lot of teams out there that Guillorme would get a shot to play every single day. He'd get a look at wherever they have a hole in the infield. Second and third, we feel comfortably at. The Mets are a really good team, and they have a really good lineup, and they have one of the best players at his position in the game in Francisco Lindor at short. They have Jeff McNeil that is very, very adequate, above adequate in left field and second base, that I think Guillorme having this kind of breakout year, while it's awesome, it's a great surprise on the offensive side of things. I think it also speaks to the corner we are turning watching our New York Mets become a really, really good team, that some guys that aren't everyday players or staples in the lineup are going to outperform their expectations as well.
It definitely needs to be a mindset change, I think. You mentioned how good the Mets team is, and that really brings me to the idea of this West Coast swing that's coming up. And a lot of fans and everyone's very afraid of this West Coast swing. And I think it's one of those things.
Why?
I think it's one of those things that we should sit there and be like, the Dodgers should be worried about playing the Mets. The Padres should be worried about playing the Mets. So it shouldn't just be, the Mets are rolling into town and they're just going to get, beat up by these, West Coast good teams. The Mets are, a very good team that's on par with those. I mean, they have a 9.5 game lead as of this recording in the NL East. That's the biggest lead in baseball
by a lot.
for a division. By a lot. The next is the Yankees, actually at 5. So almost double. So the Mets are playing great ball, and it coincides with maybe their division not playing the best, but they're a very, very good team, and I think fans should, begin to realize that a little bit more.
Joe, I'd ask you closing thoughts for today's show, but I think you summed it up quite well there, having no fear of this West Coast trip. No Mets fan should have fear, because I'll tell you right now, in that Mets clubhouse, it is clear they don't fear anyone right now. So a reminder, subscribe to the Mets Pod at Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch on SNY's YouTube, watch on SNY's social channels as our clips are tweeted out, or wherever you get your podcast. Thanks so much, everybody. We'll catch you next week.